Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor. And now, with the budget coming up, there's of course a lot of excitement about what's going to happen in the budget. But there's also something else in early February that's going to happen, which is the RBI's next Monetary Policy Committee meeting. And so, what the RBI is thinking, how it's thinking about things, that's also of key importance at this time. And now, to discuss all of that, we have the perfect person. It's Dr. Ram Singh. He's the director of the Delhi School of Economics, but he's also a member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the RBI, which is its rate setting body. So thank you so much, Dr. Singh, for joining us.
Thank you, Sharad. Thank you having me for this program.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure, sir. Thank you. And so now, Dr. Singh, in the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting in December, you were one of two members who dissented with the majority view. They had said the majority view was, of course, that the rates should not be changed, they should remain unchanged. But you had argued saying that it was time for a 25 basis point rate cut. So, could you walk us through your reasoning at the time?
Right. So, when the last MPC meeting took place in first week of December, by that time we already had data on second quarter GDP growth rate. The mandate of the MPC is to strike a balance between inflation targeting, keeping growth in view.
Yes.
And GDP growth rate had slowed down significantly. So that was second quarter of current fiscal year where growth was below what we had expected.
5.4%.
It had come down to 5.4, which is lowest in last 2 years.
Yes.
And therefore, this in itself called for changing the pivot of monetary policy. Then there were other signs that other economic indicators that also suggested that we have a serious relook at the price mechanisms, price setting mechanisms, and also take a view on efficacy of inflation targeting regime.
Right.
So when we took decision, when deliberations in MPC took place, we already had the benefit of looking at experience of inflation targeting regime,
right,
and how it has affected, influenced food prices, core inflation, and headline inflation.
Right.
So when I examined these issues, I noticed that the inflation targeting regime and repo rates, interest rate in particular, do not have much bearing on volatility of food prices.
Absolutely.
Right? And therefore, we should be thinking in terms of seeing through some of this volatility, keeping growth in mind. Whereas core inflation has been below the target of 4%. Target is for headline, but core inflation has been consistently below 4% during last 2 years. And for last 1 year, it has been actually coming down. And it is also reflective of the growth dynamics, because core inflation and GDP growth, they mostly move in tandem.
Yes.
So both have been, during last 1 year, both have been on little downward trajectory.
Right.
And therefore, I thought that this is the time for the monetary policy to do its bit by trying to pump prime the growth through reduced interest rates.
I understand. And so now, do you feel that anything has changed to revise for you to revise your opinion, or?
I still hold the same view.
The same view. Okay.
Yes. But since the budget is going to be presented, I feel that fiscal authorities, governments, central government and state governments also have a role in the inflation growth trade-off, in striking a healthy balance.
Right. I was actually going to come to that. In the budget, is there a way that the fiscal authorities, which is the government, can work with the monetary authority, which is the RBI, to control food inflation better? And is there a call for greater coordination between the two?
So the call for greater coordination is always there,
Right.
because inflation and growth are of concern, are of direct concern to governments. Whereas MPC's mandate is also primarily inflation targeting, keeping growth in view.
Right.
So the case for coordination is always there. But now we have an opportunity on part of government to manifest that it's doing its bit to resolve this trade-off.
Right.
And government can do several things. You referred to the food price inflation and volatility in fruits and vegetable prices. It's here government can work, can make a significant difference by addressing supply side constraints.
Right.
So it is widely accepted that food price inflation, especially the volatility, is driven by supply side issues.
Right.
So, and to the extent it is supply side problem, it is the government that can make largest difference. For example, incentivizing investment in storage, reducing frictions in fruits and vegetables markets. So these measures can, by if we are able to reduce wastage of fruits and vegetables, that will increase supply and therefore will put downward pressure, is likely to reduce food prices, and
Right.
to that extent it will make RBI's job, MPC's job easier, because then the major preoccupation with food price that concern will remain a concern but will not be an overriding concern.
Right.
So at the other thing that government can do is in principle it can also affect the demand
Yes.
for food also. In common discourse, very few people realize that some of the food inflation is also a demand side phenomenon.
Okay, it's not
So
just
it
supply.
is, in my view, it is the income effect that is working.
Okay.
And what motivates me to make this argument is that we have benefit of household consumption expenditure survey data.
Yes.
There are 2 rounds, and this is very comprehensive, systematically very representative data. What we observe from this data is that consumption levels have gone up across all groups.
Right.
Moreover, consumption basket has become healthier. Share of food has come down and share of non-food expenses has gone up. And food has become more, the consumption has become more nutritious. Still miles to go, but things have moved in a right direction. Now, on one hand, you have food inflation, and simultaneously you have advances, consumption basket getting bigger and healthier for everybody.
Right.
So this does not square up if we do not factor in the income effect. In my view, it is the transfers that are happening, cash transfers and non-cash transfers. Cash transfers like, PM Kisan Nidhi, direct cash transfers by central government, by state governments, and indirect transfers, indirect income transfers in kind through food and subsidies on LPGs and all. So it's my view that these transfers together, they are all-time high, about 8% of GDP of general government. They seem to be making a difference, and due to it means that effective increase in the disposable income of households, and that is showing up, that is putting upward pressure. Increased demand is also accounting for some of the food inflation that we see. Okay. To the extent it is the demand-driven income effect, it's a good thing. So all of food inflation is not bad, and all of it does not hurt. Of course, we can do with lower food inflation, but it seems like some of this is driven by something good that is happening across the board.
Okay. And so you mentioned that there are steps that the government can take on supply chains and things like that to ease the supply side concerns to do with food inflation.
Right.
But in the budget, there are also things that it can do to boost demand, like say increase capital expenditure or cut income taxes, which might increase demand. But do you feel that it's going to make your job in the MPC that much tougher to contain inflation?
Some of the expenses, capital expenditure,
Mhm.
can actually make job easier.
Okay.
To the extent so suppose we are able to divert some of capex towards storage,
Right.
addressing the supply side constraints. To that extent, in the short run, in the immediate run, it may show up as upward pressure from the demand channel. But in the medium term, long term, it will reduce wastage, it will reduce friction, and it will bring food prices down, and to that extent, job will be easier.
I understand.
So some of this is highly desirable in my view. So investment in storage, cold storage wares, along with the reducing of regulatory cholesterol. For example, we have a cap on storage capacity that is permitted for private stores.
Right.
So some of those things also need a relook, along with increased focus on storage capacity and transportation and market integration for farm outputs.
Okay, and now, of course, with the budget coming up, the issue of taxes is front and center. Everybody is calling for an income tax rate cut. But as far as spurring demand is concerned, do you feel that an income tax rate cut would be better, or the GST Council cutting GST rates? That is, would it be better to increase the amounts of or increase the amount of income in people's hands by cutting their income tax, or reduce the tax on their expenditure? Which would work better in terms of spurring demand?
So, to answer this question, we need to have a sense of what is happening to the demand.
Mhm.
So, the aggregate demand is not that bad. CSO's estimate is of growth of around 7%,
Yes.
which is significantly higher than what we had last year, and reasonable otherwise. So, there are also indicators showing that rural demand is also holding up.
Right.
And that is another evidence that the food price, the common narrative that food prices are hurting poor rural economy, it does not square with the fact that rural demand for two-wheelers, for tractors, for FMCGs is holding up. So again, it seems like this is another piece of evidence that goes in favor of what I argued, that income effect through transfers is happening, is at work. So, but here in this context, rural demand is holding up, and demand for luxury goods, air travel, five-star hotels, travel, tourism, SUVs, that is also doing great.
Right.
If there are some mixed signals coming, it comes from the demand from what we call middle class.
Yes.
Now, if that is the concern, then income tax reductions is not the way to go about it.
Okay.
Because about little over 3 crore people effectively pay tax. Right? Okay. Now, out of 3 crores, less than 1 crore pay 70% of the tax.
Yes.
All right. Remaining 2 crores to 2.5 crores pay very little, I think 20% of the tax collected. And now question is, should we count these 2 crores next to 1 crore wealthiest to income rich 1 crore, and next 2 crores? Should we count that as a middle class or not?
Right.
Even if we take them as a middle class, it will make very little difference in terms of the foregone tax revenue. And therefore, it will put very little income in some hands, but it will not cover what we call middle class, middle income group. Right. Whereas if we can work on GST, GST affects everybody. So the effect of similar revenue sacrifice in terms of GST rates will be more pervasive, will be more widely spread, and will benefit larger sections, including the group we want to help.
I understand. And but then the thing is that the GST rates are not in the budget, so we might have to wait a little while until the next GST Council meeting for those decisions to be taken. But coming back to the RBI, there's another thing apart from its inflation targeting mechanism. The other thing that it has been doing is intervening in the forex market to stem the depreciation of the rupee.
Yes.
Do you think that this is a fruitful endeavor?
So my view is that they are not primarily working to stop depreciation of rupee. They seem to be working to reduce volatility
Right.
in exchange rate. I think RBI has indicated that they are open to some adjustment in exchange rates. But they seem to be caring too much about the volatility, which is the right thing. The exchange rate stability, even if it adjusts, it should adjust in a more predictable way, more stable way. They seem to be working on that. And here, RBI, some members of the RBI research group, Dr. Michael Patra, Dr. Sunil Kumar, and two others, they have recently published a report. It's a research work. It shows that the flows, FII flows, are the primary reasons in fluctuations in volatility in exchange rate. Yes. That's one thing, that one piece they show. Right. The second conclusion emerging from their research is that it's this kind of intervention RBI is making these days are more effective in neutralizing the volatility consequences of such inflows and outflows. Okay. So to answer your question, there's a case for reducing volatility because certainty is very important. But perhaps there could be, and they are open to some adjustment in exchange rates.
In the exchange rate, right? Because over the last few months, they've spent about $75 billion of their reserves in addressing this volatility, and that's quite a large sum.
Yes, but I think it's worth it if you compare the benefits of it. Right. So if you give them the credit that they have managed the volatility part very well, which they have, then it shows that the exchange rate differentials that have happened during last 2-3 months, they are primarily on account of appreciation in dollar index. Right. So rupee is doing very well vis-a-vis other currencies, and vis-a-vis dollar also some adjustment has happened, and through RBI's intervention, we can see that that investors still believe in fundamentals of Indian economy.
Okay, and now in March this year, the RBI is going to be reassessing its inflation targeting framework. The target that they had so far of 4% plus minus 2%, right, they'll be reevaluating that. Yes. But the thing is that even though they gave themselves this band between 2% and 6%, the single-minded focus has been achieving the 4% target. Right. So do you feel in March it might make sense for them to narrow the band a little bit, but then allow themselves the full comfort of the band instead of going for a single number?
So, answer to this question will require serious research, serious examination of our experience. Right. My feeling is that we should have a wide band, okay, and be open to working within the band. Right. As long as my view, and this my minutes also reflect this, my view is that we should not be always targeting at the point target. We should not be RBI's interest rate policy should not be shooting to hit the point target of 4%.
Right.
As long as we are broadly moving in the right direction, we should be okay with that.
Okay.
As long as food remains important component of household budget, and as long as we have volatility in food prices, we need a wider cushion.
Right.
A wider band is helpful. That's my view.
Okay, and now finally, in the budget, are there anything in particular? You've already mentioned investments in cold storage and warehousing and things like that. But are there any other particular measures that you would like to see in the upcoming budget?
I would like to see continued focus on capex till such time private investment comes along to do the heavy lifting.
And this year, capex has actually been lower than last year, right? So far.
Utilization has been lower than last year,
Yes.
and it will be good if they get closer to the targeted amount. Still, that's something that should be the focus. And I also feel that on income tax front, some readjustment in slabs will be desirable.
Okay.
Perhaps a combination of what we have under the old regime and what we have under the new tax regimes.
Right.
So slab structuring is better for new tax regime, whereas it is important to keep in mind some of the concessions, exemptions, rebate that are there under the old tax regime, for example, for housing.
So you feel those should stay?
Those should, so we should be able to accommodate some of those exemptions under the new schemes, and then phase them out gradually.
I see. I understand. And
so I feel this for two reasons. One is that interest rates have been high for now last 2-3 years, and it is showing up in terms of the debt obligations. Now the share of home loans with interest rate 9+ is more than 2/3.
Okay.
And house loans, investment in houses is very sensitive to interest rates.
Right.
So this means that whereas monetary authorities should look at this, and my view is that we should reduce interest rates. At the same time, fiscal authorities should also do its bit by granting those concessions along with increased readjusted slabs as they are under the new tax regime.
Right.
So these measures will be very helpful in my view. Post budget, I think there's a strong case for adjustments in simplification and streamlining of GST rates. At the moment, too many exemptions and changes. They are creating confusion and generating a litigious environment. That should be that. If we avoid that, it will be very good thing for the economy.
Right. And now my absolute the last question is, overall, what is your outlook on the economy? Are you optimistic, or do you feel that unless some major changes are made, we're in a little bit of trouble?
So I think 7%. So this year would be an exception, but I think 7% growth rate, GDP growth rate, is within the realm of possibilities.
Okay.
We have been able to achieve it in the past, and it's very much achievable. But our target has to be upward of 8%.
Right.
So that would require two things quickly. One is to make sure that capital formation, investment goes up. It goes back to 36-37%. And other is that it will require some factor market reforms. Yes.
So, but again, for this...
and last, allow me one thing very important that we missed, where budget can make and should make a difference, and that is related to MSMEs.
Okay.
So MSMEs is the real engine of this economy when we think of employment generation, when we think of what we call middle class. So, I feel that the MSMEs do not have access to easy credit and reliable credit.
Right.
So their cost of credit, cost of funds is upward of 18%, and that's the floor. There are contract letters showing that several MSMEs have borrowed at the rate of 36%.
Wow. Okay.
Now there's no business line that can be rewarding after meeting such high interest rates. So this is one thing where we have to give all our focus if we want to, become Viksit Bharat by 2047. That has to be an important focus for us. So we have to work, we have to make sure that they have access to affordable finance, single most important thing.
Right.
So that will require that the role of bank, share of bank credit to MSME should go up, and that of non-institutional funding sources should come down. Even for non-banking financial companies, share should also come down because they lend at very high
rates. Right. Okay. So that's a refocus for the banks, that they should target MSMEs a little more.
What government can do is that it can create platforms where drawing upon several sources, for example, GST filings by MSMEs, for example, tapping their revenue stream, we can create digital footprints and use those footprints as a collateral. So that today's problem is that bank need collaterals to issue loans, and the collaterals have to be tangible. Right. What we need is, and what is possible, is to create digital collaterals for MSMEs. Use those collaterals to give them loan on concessional terms, on priority sector lending terms basis. That can make fundamental difference on employment front and also on exports fronts, and it is achievable.
Okay, wonderful. So, I mean, I hope policymakers are watching, and because these are absolutely insightful comments on what the budget can contain. But on that note, thank you so much, Dr. Singh, for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much.